Hello, welcome to Fireside Chats. Today's topic is spiritual sustenance. As you may well know, Sister Denise is with us in the studio today, and she has been joining us in this series to share her wisdom and insight into various topics. Today's topic is of particular interest to us because we want to share with you, the viewer, aspects of spiritual understanding as to how one looks after oneself from a spiritual perspective. In the world that we're living in, most people are focused on the outside and not on the inside. And Sister Denise is here to share her understanding of how one looks after the spirit, which is everything that happens in your internal world. And this series looks at things like the core of your spirituality. It asks you to gauge what impact your spiritual understanding, if any, has on your consciousness. We also look at things like philosophical and spiritual integrity. And most importantly, we ask you to ask your heart what your relationship with God is, whether you're happy with your relationship with God, whether He features in your life in any way whatsoever, and whether you can bring more balance and more depth and understanding and love into your relationship with Him. So, Sister Denise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And a very, very warm welcome to today's show. Spiritual sustenance. This is an uncommon term, and when one wakes up in the morning, you think, this is what I've got to do for the day, this is what I've got to eat, this is where I've got to go. But spiritual sustenance is not something that pops into the mind. Why is it important to you to have it as an agenda on one's day?
Because you are a spiritual being. When you think that you're a body, then you think about, I've got to eat this and drink this, and I have to have this and I have to have that for my physical sustenance. But most people's lives may be physically very fine, very well assured, but spiritually starving. So, I mean, I am responsible for sustaining myself spiritually, but I think also it's very important to create relationships with people and an inner relationship with God, which is sustaining of your spirit. Because even if you do not have what you need physically, if you have what you need spiritually, you can manage it. But if you have what you need physically, but you don't have what you need spiritually, you'll remain very restless, irritable, and your life will not have meaning or substance. So spiritual sustenance, what do I have to do for me? First of all, I have to make sure that I meditate every day.
Meditate on what or whom?
Meditate has many meanings. You need to have time in silence because you have to restore your spirit. You have to meditate on your own soul. You have to meditate on your relationship with God. You have to meditate on the meaning of your life, on who you are, on what this is all about, on what is God for you, you know, and really sustain that relationship. So there's meditation. Then you also have to nurture your intelligence. And that means you need to sustain yourself with spiritual literature, with information that is stimulating for your intellect, that takes you deep, that takes you into meaningfulness. So part of your sustenance is to make sure that your life has meaning. And that's an inner level of meaning.
Sister Denise, you used the word spiritually starving. This is it's a gripping term. How do you know that you're spiritually starving, because we tend to go about our lives by waking up in the morning and thinking about, what do I have to do today? And you get out of bed and you go about your life. Most of us make the mistake of not stopping to think what is going on within my spirit inside of me. How do you know that you're hungry on a spirit level? What are the signs? And specifically, what are the danger signs?
Well, when you're spiritually hungry, you will try to feed your spirit by giving yourself something physical, which is not going to touch the area where you're hungry, so that you'll always be trying to consume. Could be people, could be things, could be substances, all sorts of things. You're trying to use physical things, and you always remain unsatisfied. And this is the sign that you're spiritually hungry.
Okay, so you were saying help is at hand, but you got to put yourself right, and it's not something that you can delegate, is it? Spiritual sustenance. You can't get someone else to do it for you.
Of course not.
So you've got to do it for yourself. Sister Denise, why is it so deep in mankind that whether as children or as adults, we tend to look to other people to meet our needs?
Well, because of being body conscious. Simple as that. People, places, and things. This is what you use to sustain yourself, and you will have temporary benefit. And because it's temporary, you think, well, if you have more of it, it'll last longer. But you find that you have to have more and more and more, but the fulfillment tends to last for shorter and shorter times, which means you're going about it in the wrong way. And what you need is to consider yourself as a spiritual being and nurture yourself in that light, and then also take sustenance from association with spiritually minded people who will keep you on the right track, and also try to create your relationship with the Supreme Being, with God, and actually take light, take energy from that source, because that is the only thing that is going to make a dent in your emptiness.
You are able to do this on a daily basis and go about your life as normal. What changes do you have to effect on the outside to support your spiritual journey? You can't go on as you did, can you?
I think you have to reset your daily routine.
In what way?
Well, you need to look at what you normally do, because you have to extract time. Now, some of the things people do, their leisure things, they could actually switch that time for spiritual sustenance. Some people, they will sleep longer than they really need, or they will sometimes feel so spiritually exhausted that they actually feel that by sleeping longer they will deal with that spiritual exhaustion that way, because they think of it as physical exhaustion. But what happens when a person starts to lead a spiritual lifestyle, they give special time in the early morning before you enter your work day, your social day, whatever, to spiritual work, to meditation, to spiritual study. And when you do this, anyway, you find you need less sleep. So you're not really needing to make drastic alterations in your life. And I think that if you do something drastic, you won't be able to keep it up. You want to really introduce these components gradually into your life, so that you can, so that it is sustainable, And of course, that's the same word, isn't it? Sustainable. So you have to really make your life sustainable by looking both to your spiritual needs and your physical needs. And when you are not such a hungry soul, you will spend less time trying to fill that hole with things that don't fill it. Then you have more time. So it's a change, you change it around.
So Denise, there are so many people across the globe who have landed themselves in the condition that they have because of being so reckless with their lives, their spirit, their very existence. It's like, today is my last day, I can do whatever I want type of thing. And there's a culture of being oblivious to the consequences. They treat their bodies abominably. They treat their selves like, I don't know, an object. What is it that causes you to be a danger to yourself?
Well, to me, it's just an extreme of materialism, you see. This is an object. It's all about live now, pay later, live now, don't pay at all. Just becoming a hedonist, just do everything for pleasure. Everything is for pleasure. I'm going to die, so I might as well have as much pleasure as possible. That's what life is for. But this is really not true. And sooner or later, something's going to happen where it all goes wrong, and then you start suffering, and you wonder, why are you suffering? Well, it's because this is how you managed yourself, and that's not a good idea.
Yeah, so every moment of pain that I experience as a human being, there's a cause. There's no random force that's causing me pain. It has a source. Pain has a source.
Everything that you experience has a cause. And
the cause comes from external or internal?
Either way. The thing is, everything that happens to you, you can take responsibility for having brought it on to yourself. And so, you can't really blame outside circumstances, but you have to go in and in and in to yourself and see, what attitudes, what activities have I been doing? What are my habits, especially looking at the habits? What habits do I have that have made this happen?
Okay. So I now have become spiritually enlightened, and listening to the show, I'm all inspired to do something about my inner world. But yet, the resistance and the pull to behave like I was. I want to give up smoking, but my friends all smoke. All of my friends and I get together at the pub at 6 o'clock every day, and if I don't go there, then I lose my friends, and if I go there, I'll drink. So how, Denise, do you manage to juggle all of this? Because you need to socialize, and you don't want to lose all your friends, but then you realize that excessive alcohol consumption is destroying your life. How do you make a decision to take care of yourself and also not feel that you're losing out on what the world has to offer?
I think what you're going to find, if you start making a change in your lifestyle, that those who you think are your friends, they're your drinking friends. So I don't know what is the quality of that friendship. People who enable you to do something which is destructive to your life, is that a friend that you want to hold on to? You may find yourself looking for different friends. I mean, once you start to work on yourself, once you start to develop your spirit, you are going to start to make changes that are going to bring about other changes in your life too, and it may not be a bad thing.
Simple as that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sister Denise, spiritual life, is it lonely? Does one have friends when you're spiritual? Because it seems to be such a selective group that will follow what you just said. That there are not many in the world who think like this and live like this. So where do you find like-minded people if you're living in the West? Okay, India, yes, but where do you find like-minded people? Does spirituality mean a life of loneliness? Does it mean a life of a dull life, a boring life?
I think that there are more like-minded people than you realize. Mm-hmm. And that all you have to do is to orient yourself in a manner that is more true to yourself, and you kind of put out your antennas and you start to encounter like-minded people, because who will you make as your friends? It'll be like-minded people, and you're not going to be the only one. It is true that you may find there are fewer who are interested in this kind of personal development. There's lots of people who want to just have a nice time and, drink and play and fool around. Great, you can do that. But ultimately, I think you're going to become more selective, and you're going to want to be with people with whom you can have more deep conversations, where you're really looking for meaningfulness, you're looking for something deeper in life, and you will attract that to yourself.
Okay, you answered part of my question. I'm going to ask the next part again. It's the work that you've got to do on yourself. You said earlier that you cannot delegate it. You've got to do it for yourself. Okay? Now, does that not mean that you become lonely, or rather, not the word lonely, isolated? Don't you become isolated if you live this life that you're advocating?
I think that you are going to want to take out time. Alone time is very important for a person. But in your day, you have your social time, you have your work time, you have your alone time. It's just that, most people, they discard the alone time because they don't think it's necessary. Or maybe they are uncomfortable in their own company. But as you start to develop yourself spiritually, you really value the alone time, and you program that into your 24 hours.
Okay. So, Sister Denise, God's role in spiritual sustenance. You said earlier that you do invite him into your space to help you on your spiritual journey. What does he do with you and for you? And most importantly, how do you keep him? If you're a chartered accountant, for example, or a mother of 4 children, and you're extremely busy, how do you keep God and live your life and do whatever you have to do at the same time?
Well, those are not identities. They are functions.
Okay. But how do you be with God, which is part and parcel of what you described as spiritual sustenance?
No, but you haven't understood. You can never say, I am a chartered accountant. I do chartered accountancy from this time to this time.
Okay.
I perform as a mother when I'm with the children, but I am not limited to any of those functions.
Okay.
I am bigger than that.
So how do you include God?
Well, very easily. Because, God will include you in his world. That's very nice, to be invited to spend time with God, by God. And
is he issuing the invitation?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You will get, many people, they get some kind of a pull, you see. I don't think that anyone would engage in a spiritual practice unless they felt a pull. And I think God doesn't do things alone. God will look around and see, okay, yeah, I'll have this one, this one, this one, this one. You know, if you can be called to do something greater than just the mundane run-of-the-mill activities which are just for maintaining this body, but something which is higher, which has an extra dimension of meaning. You know, if you're somebody who has space for that, you will listen to that kind of a call and you will include that, you see. Because spirituality is never exclusive of the material world, because you cannot have any experience at all unless you're in a body. And if you're in a body, you have to look after it. You have responsibilities, you have a role. So spirituality is all about balance between matter and spirit, whereas materialism has nothing to do with balance. It's all about going out of balance.
Okay, so spiritual sustenance includes looking after various aspects of the self. So after you started leading a spiritual life, how has your relationship changed to your own body, to the people in your life, towards yourself, and towards Mother Nature? How has this changed on the various levels?
Everything changes, because when you start to have a spiritual life, you start to operate on a different dimension, you start to study, and you become richer, you shift, you change, your vision becomes very much broader, you start getting involved in activities that have a wider meaning and a wider impact. You know, you really start becoming a different person. And that is a slow process. It is adding more and more dimensions to your life. And so it's an evolution, really, more than anything.
Okay.
And you grow with it.
Yes. Mr. Denise, there have been people who have found spiritually sustaining themselves extremely difficult. What would your answer be to people who find themselves in that position where they would like to spiritually sustain themselves, but they find it incredibly difficult? They find difficulty in maintaining a balance between the material and spiritual. They just find it difficult.
Well, I think that they may say, I find it difficult, but then you need to analyze, okay, what is making it difficult? And what's making it difficult is if they want the results, but they don't want to do the work that's necessary for getting the results. So it's difficult because they're lazy.
So difficulty amounts to what, human weakness? It's tantamount to human weakness?
Well, you're making an excuse. You say, oh, it's too difficult. But it's not too difficult. If you want to put in the work, you will get the result. But there's no free lunch.
Not with spirituality.
Not with anything.
Not with anything. Okay. Okay, so God's coming back to God. Your relationship with Him involves conversation.
God will provide you with teachings on a daily basis, but then you have to sit down and study that.
Okay.
God will be present for you on a daily basis, but you have to be present for God to receive that love and that sustenance. So you have to give time. You have to put in your 2 cents. You have to do your side of the bargain, because it's a relationship, you know. And it's not like you just, money grows on trees, or, the rain will fall into your mouth. You cannot get anything unless you put in the effort to get it. And so this is why I say the problem is laziness.
Okay.
But, I mean, you have to also look at your capacity, because sometimes people are unable to evaluate themselves accurately, and they want more than they're able to do the work to get, or they they think that, well, just by thinking about it, it'll happen, you know, so that sometimes people are unrealistic. So partly could be lazy, partly could be unrealistic. And so one has to be really grounded and at the same time also courageous, because you have to take steps out of the box, out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, you'll never really go into a wider dimension than the little world that you started off in.
Okay. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our audience with before we say goodbye to them today?
Yes, I think it's important to realize anything you do for yourself is also an inspiration for others. And that when you do inspire other people, you receive blessings from them. And that is an energy which actually carries you forward in your own spiritual endeavors.
Okay, that's a lovely point on which to bring today's talk to a close. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your insight and wisdom.
Thanks.
Those of you who are at home watching this, Sister Denise has shared from her 40 years of practicing Rajyoga meditation, what it means to look after oneself spiritually. As usual, she has told us things that we don't necessarily know beforehand. The thing that sat with me the most is when Sister Denise shared that spiritual sustenance is not something that one can delegate, and it is a lifelong journey in which you're devoted or committed to healing yourself as a person, growing as a person, but also finding like-minded people is not impossible. I thought it was, but you said it's not, and also including God in your journey. So it's doable. There are people across the globe who are engaged in such spiritual practice, successfully so. And I hope wherever it is that you are on your spiritual journey, you have found inspiration from the words that were shared today. We do wish you good luck on your own spiritual journey, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.